Good morning, everyone. This is Bekir Fatih Meral from Sakarya University Special Education Department. Today, I'm gonna talking about my presentation will be on behavioral strategies to solve the feeding problems, also sleep problems are seen among children or individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. If you remember that our previous presentations were about the nature of these problems, what types of the problems are seen among these kids, also some assessments procedures about the feeding or sleep problems. Totally today we will just focus on non-pharmacological evidence-based practices, because we need to consider our solutions under the behavioral approach. Let's see what we have here. Just a second to share screen. Again, this chapter or presentation, split presentation, be part of a European Union project developing a higher education curriculum is SIT, teaching for the health protection and the promotion of intellectual disability in individuals. First, I split it two different parts. First, I will talk about the behavioral intervention for feeding problems, and the second part will be reserved for some strategies to solve what kind of strategies can be used for the sleep problems of children with IDD or individual with IDD. After completing this presentation, or whenever you like, the study on this presentation, I hope so you can explain to what kind of intervention methods or techniques can be used to feeding problems, I'm sorry, or sleep problems. Feeding behavioral intervention or strategies totally changed it depending on the nature of the feeding problems. For example, if a child represents food selectivity, we can use a different strategy, or food packing, we can use a different strategy. Totally change what will we use to kind of strategies depending on the child's, the nature's child's, the problems. Fortunately, we have many experimental, validated, efficient strategies can use to feeding problems. For example, refusing to eat or some mealtime behaviors. These intervention mostly used to increase the eating behavioral. Some children who refuse to eat some things or who test the new foods, or resisting to taking a bite, and not eating the variety of food, insist a specific narrow range of food. So our target behavior about these kids, the enlarging the food repertoire, because the healthy eating or healthy feeding means consuming the different kind of foods, not just eating the specific foods. Even a kids can eat chocolate. It doesn't matter. At the same time, he or she, if he or she can eat the uh, fruit, vegetables, or other types of food, that's okay. The amount, for example, eating chocolate, yes, an acceptable level, but at the same time, eating the other foods. For example, do you probably you remember my previous presentation? If a child just eating as a couple of foods, really problematic. For example, just eating fried potato. It's very dangerous for their health. This evidence-based operation mostly based on the extinction of inappropriate behavior. These actions describe the escape extinction. Escape extinction. We target the escape extinction because these kids represent the food refusal. They don't like to eat new food or what we serve it, or as a parent or as a practitioners. The idea behind the escape extinction, most children with severe feeding problems have inappropriate eating behavior. For example, when we try to give a bite or give a new food, if he or she doesn't like to eat, probably refusing the food by crying, by hating the plate or spoon or food, or maybe show some inappropriate behavior like self-injuries or hitting yourself, maybe you are parents or you are practitioners. All of behaviors except the eating the food, inappropriate behaviors. So we need to run escape extinction procedures to solve those kind of problems. How can we set this inappropriate behavior? Let me explain. When the child cries, hit the spoon, or turn his head or her head another way while food is being presented, families or parents mostly give up the servicing the food. Kids observe this process, and by themselves they started to think about, if I turned my head or hit the spoon or hit the plate or the cry, this process, the serving the food process will cut. This kind of negative reinforcement. Most of time, when the child represent the kind of the negative behaviors, inappropriate behaviors, most of parents cut this process, serving the serving the food process, mostly cut it by families, parents. In this case, namely, actually, we negatively reinforce our kids. So in this situation, in this case, we need to apply a behavioral strategic plans we call the mainly most of time used these strategies escape extinction procedures. Sorry about the pronunciation. We have a table. Just a second. The first slides, I say totally what kind of strategies will be used by the practitioners or parents, depending on the will be depend on the nature of the problems. For example, if our child or our children or individuals, who have the kind of problems, the food selectivity, we can use the simultaneous presentation, sequential presentation, or blended presentation. I will explain all of them. Or if a case represent the food refusal show an inappropriate behavior, we can use the escape extension, physical guidance, or activity schedule. Or our kids, if show the food packing, storage or the beverage, storage food or beverage in his or her mouth, we can use non-removable spoon, flip spoon, upright spoon redistribution, and cheese procedures. There are kind of proof with the effective way to solve the different type of the feeding problems. Before to explain the detail of these strategies, let's see some video. Yeah, unfortunately, the YouTube. Yeah. Yeah, we are part of the capitalist system. Really sorry.
As you can see, this is a tough dilemma for a parent. Although James's teachers have been
I'm sorry, YouTube channels, there are so many advertisements. Let me share screen again about our video.
As you can see, this is a tough dilemma for a parent. Although James's teachers have been trying daily to get him to eat new foods, and mom has been too, he refuses. You can see how accidental reinforcement can become a big problem. One day turns into a week turns into a month, and then 2 years later, the only thing that James has had in his diet is McDonald's chicken nuggets and some jelly candies. We make a list of all of the foods and drinks that your child currently consumes. Note any selectivity. For example, only eats McDonald's chicken nuggets. As you can clearly see, James really wants that candy, but he wants nothing to do with the yogurt. Watch now the combination of these 3 steps. the strong motivation for food, his desire for his favorite piece of candy, and the relatively small amount that's required for him to eat does the trick.
Good job, buddy. Good job.
Mom and James' teachers understood and began to consistently apply these 3 steps. Watch how yogurt now becomes a very highly preferred food for James.
You know what? We're going on a
At the time this video was taken, which you will see again later, the yogurt was actually used as a promise reinforcer for eating half a tuna sandwich. Mom and James' teachers never thought that eating the yogurt was possible, much less a tuna sandwich. In our effort to continuously move towards independence, now you're going to see James having lunch with his friend Niall. At this point, James now eats independently with his classmates. Notice he does not need any additional reinforcement. He still gets more time to eat, but it's no longer a major issue in his life. In fact, there's no more feeding intervention going on at this time.
Let's back to our slides. Can watch another video if you wish later, okay? Let's explain these procedures, how can we solve the feeding problems. As you see in the video, the kids refusing to eating the yogurts and the especially prefer the jelly. How can combine we call for example, doesn't like to eat yogurt. We call this food the unpreferred food, but he preferred the candy. We call the candy, or the whatsoever he like or she likes, the preferred food. Most of strategies depends on the combination of unpreferred and the preferred foods servicing together. Let's explain the respectively step by step. The first extension procedures. In the first part of the video, he was turning his hat, escape from the food. We need the first escape extension. There are some evidence-based ways to treatment of feeding problems. First of all, why a kids escape the food. The key terms here: negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is one of the main reasons of the inappropriate mealtime behavior. When a child with IDD doesn't like to eat or something, or intake a bite, he or she may refuse the food, the turning away from the food his or her had, or hitting the spoon or the fork or spoon, or another inappropriate behavior, can show. If parents or practitioners give up or cut the servicing food, these kids will be reinforced negatively. After understanding the nature of the problem behavior, we can use the escape extension. Escape extension mainly target the insisting the food servicing, not give up, not push back to pull back to the food, insisting, until he or she accepting the food putting the putting the bite or our food, with spoon or fork in front of the mouth or the lips, not give back, not cut to the servicing the food. Or at the same time, we can use some gentle physical guidance, physical guidance. Or also, we can say the positive things verbally. We can reinforce the kids verbally, but never cut to our servicing the food. We need to insist that our service. Yeah, it's not easy for parents, even the practitioners, but this is definitely proved the strategies, especially against the food refusal. If our child doesn't like the new foods, like an example of our video, not eating, not like to eat the yogurt or broccoli or cabbage or meat, it's changes depending on the child preferences totally. We can use besides the extension procedures, the non-removable spoon, flipped spoon, and the upright spoon. Non-removable spoon, one of the best techniques, especially using the escape extension, under the escape extension. Non-removable spoon means doesn't back to the pull back to our spoon, keeping his or her mouth until he or she opened his or her mouth, and the intake procedures, the completed, where we insisting to the servicing to this food. In these procedures, again, practitioner or parents can use the physical guidance, for example, some physical orientation, gentle pressure, apply that pressure, the child's mouth, and maybe show for example, moving our mouth, to show how to eat, how to accept that food or bite. Another procedure, flip spoon, requires to turning the food at the angle of 118 into the mouth. For example, servicing the food into the mouth, and the flipped spoon into the mouth or his or her tongue. And the upright spoon servicing the full food at the 45 angle into the mouth. Right? Also, you can use the physical guidance or gentle pressure, the up to the knee, up to the chin little bit, and so then you can serve the full food 45 angle into the mouth. We have some food presentation techniques. 3 of them very famous and very effective: simultaneous presentation, sequential presentation, and blended presentation. Simultaneous presentation includes serving the food, preferred food, above, and unpreferred food under the preferred food in the same fork, in the same spoon. For example, first of all, we need to put the unpreferred food to spoon like a broccoli, and then we put top of this unpreferred food, we need to put the preferred food, like what was that? Yeah, for example, in my example, the chips, for example, potato chips, or whatsoever. It's changed. But first, we have a prepare. We have a make a list about our kids. What are the preferred foods our kids? What are the unpreferred foods our kids? Because later we need to use the unpreferred and the preferred foods together. Those techniques, they totally like the combination of these foods, the serving together. And the other technique, second technique, sequential presentation. This process means the offering the preferred food like a chips first, and then offering the non-preferred food, for example, such a broccoli. For example, I have a 2 plates. One include the preferred food, another one that include the unpreferred food. First, I will serve the preferred food like a fried potato, and then I can give the unpreferred food. For example, like a maybe lentil soup. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's totally changing the my kids' preferences. All of procedures, there are so many research, especially validated by the behavioral analysis, simultaneous presentation or sequential presentation. The important things at the same time, the social validity of these techniques. Parents can use each of these techniques. And the last technique, blended presentation. Blended presentation requires the blending the preferred and non-preferred food together. You can use this technique, the solid foods or beverage, For example, if your child doesn't like to eat meat, for example, or beef, you can mix this meat or piece of beef, mashed potato, or even the embedded in pasta, or the whatsoever your child's kind of preferred food. Or you can use these techniques to mixing the beverage. For example, we have a study this procedures to how can we use or how can we mix it or blend it our beverage. Let's see. Yeah, for example, in that study, researchers mixed the preferred food, for example, apple juice, and non-preferred foods such as carrot juice as the rates of the 10% non-preferred and then 90% preferred juice. The mixing ratio of preferred foods to non-preferred foods is gradually, sorry about that, degrees, for example, 80%, 20, 70%, 30, like that. This process is carried out until the child eats or drink the non-preferred food alone, mixing it the other foods. Also, these techniques was used another sample, for example, try to acceptance of the high calorie target behaviors, the acceptance of the water, in this procedures, the high calories, the mix or the beverage, they use it the preferred food. And though to this process, kids with autism start to accept the alone the unpreferred beverage. There are other techniques, for example, Chiesa procedures, or combination of these techniques together. For example, simultaneous presentation besides the XF extension, or sequential procedures with the non-removable spoon. There are so many techniques or combination of techniques can be used. As a sum, every children with or without disabilities should feed themselves, or we should feed them healthy way. There is no any particular dietary regimen to treat the disabilities. Especially, there are famous lots of diets promising the beneficial or can be used as a treatment of autism spectrum disorder. Unfortunately, none of them proves, none of them. There is no effective dietary regimen, to treat the autism spectrum disorder or intellectual disability. A kid with autism or intellectual disability or disabilities should feed like the other children, right? Even can eat the chocolates, even can eat the junk food, but a specific amount, okay? Because even some unhealthy foods, unfortunately, we can use the positive reinforcement process. So important amount of the food. Besides, by the way, we need to make some arrangement to providing the our kids may try to the new foods. We should enlarge the food repertoire to our kids. This is our main targets. Thank you so much. The first part of the behavioral strategies of feeding problems will be our next presentation about some strategies to sleep disorder, sleep problems. There are some videos, especially so many articles, so many manuscripts. You can see when you check the internet. You can see the very effective ways of the behavioral strategies to feeding problems. Thank you so much, and see you next presentation.